For the past 2 weeks on this program, we've been doing a deep dive on the American Rescue Plan, better known as the Biden stimulus. We've gone through the benefits of the new law, how it'll impact various segments of the nation, including the middle class, taxes, Obamacare, and more. Tonight we focus on small business and restaurants in particular, and we do this amid some good news. Relatively stable COVID numbers across most of the country. Forecasters are seeing a boom economy on the horizon, with spending on flights, lodging, and dining out among the most anticipated top performers. That's good news for the restaurant business. More than 90 million Americans have already received new stimulus checks worth more than $242 billion. And restrictions are easing almost everywhere. Just today, restaurants in New York outside the city can expand to 75% capacity. That includes the restaurants owned by our guest. David DiBari is the chef and owner of 2 restaurants in Westchester County, New York, called the Cookery and The Parlor. He also owns some food trucks as well. Really appreciate you coming in and talking with us. So take me back to December 2019 and January 2020, the months before COVID. How many restaurants did you have? How many workers did you have going for you? How was business?
We had 3 restaurants, including the food truck, and we had close to 100 employees between all 3. And honestly, things were joyful. They were great. It was the best month for our newest restaurant, which was Eugene's Diner and Bar in Portchester. And there was just great energy. It felt good, and we couldn't be happier. And yeah.
And a year later?
And a year later, it's been a painful roller coaster. I don't like roller coasters, so it was like taking you and putting you on top of the scream machine like every week, and like how many times can you pee your pants going through this year, and that's what it was like. So yeah, a year later we have 2 restaurants, the Cookery and The Parlor, which we started with, and we did have to make the really difficult, sort of painful decision to close Eugene's, being under a year old, and having to sort of deal with all of the facets of this pandemic was just something that we couldn't really facilitate.
And I hope to get into some of those facets. So generally speaking, what's your business down year over year? Is it? It
was easily down. We were at some point 60%. Okay. You know, with our top performers. Yeah.
Let me take you back to the very start of the pandemic. Did business start to slow before the restaurants were formally shut down? And how early on were you sweating the financial impacts?
No. It was weird because it was like this dark cloud. It just happened. It was like this Saturday, and I could picture it in my head. I'm sitting at Eugene's and we're reading the news, and you know, my chef at some point was just like, this is ridiculous. You see what's happening in New Rochelle, which was very close to which was the epicenter in Westchester, and it was very close to Portchester. A lot of my staff was traveling back and forth on train, whatnot, from New York City, and so.
And that train passes through New Rochelle.
It just there was no one in the restaurant. There was no restaurant. I think my wife would have been telling me, like, he's like, this stuff's coming, this is happening, and of course I'm like, whatever, let's cook. And yeah, it just stopped. Like, no one was in the place, and we decided to close that weekend. We closed that restaurant first, and I thought it was actually a responsible decision as well, because it just felt like this is not healthy for anybody, so let's just make this now before we actually get shut down.
And so that was in March, or late February, early March of 2020. Congress doesn't get involved until April of 2020 with the first bill and the PPP money. Mm-hmm. So you already had one restaurant closed at that point. I assume overall your financial situation wasn't great for the restaurants. Did you get any of that PP money? Were you able to factor in that money to your planning, and how helpful was it?
Well, first of all, financials for restaurants are never that great.
Well, yeah.
but you know, we closed that restaurant, and then we closed the other 2 immediately after that. Actually, we closed them all in the same weekend. But we were sitting back, waiting, hoping to get some form of relief. And it did come, and honestly, it was extremely beneficial to our businesses. I mean, it's not just about keeping the business open, it's really about the employees. It's about employee retention and the caring for them. And you know, we started our own GoFundMe pages, like, for our employees, to sort of just raise money and whatnot for them to make up for their income. And you know, yeah, I mean, it keeps the cycle going. It's what we had to do collectively as a community, and I mean community meaning government and community. You know, you can't stop the cycle, right, of money. It's like blood.
But you couldn't make plans based on that because you didn't know for sure it was coming.
No, we couldn't. We didn't know what to do. We opened, and we were open under because we were essential businesses, right? And so we could stay open for takeout, but that just was not and could never be enough. Not with the restaurants that we operate.
Well, and that leads me to a couple of questions because you had you had a number of difficult decisions to make, but two that I was thinking about as we were beginning to talk, whether to convert a business to takeout or delivery only, or just to close it down, and then what to do with your employees. Let me start with that first decision.
Yeah.
How do you make the decision to, I mean, assume at some point you had to go carry out and delivery, otherwise you wouldn't have any revenue coming in, right?
Right, yeah, I mean, it's you go into survival mode, right? At that point, like, you put your ego in a box and you just forget about everything that you feel like you were meant to do, right? And you do what you need to do to survive. And if that's to go, that's to go. And then from that, you sort of organically, which is something we get to later, but like the amount of creativity and whatnot that restaurateurs and chefs and everyone alike, it forces you to do something, then you do something, and then hopefully out of this something beautiful is going to come out. I mean, Jesus, I don't know how many delivery applications on at our restaurant right now, but we're still figuring out if that's like the best thing for us as we reopen and things start to get better. But we did what we had to do, and I like to say we look back and we had some fun doing it, if that means anything, because we do cook, and that's the most important thing.
And it sounds like your customers were there for you too. Even
they
with
were. I was in a very good community. I'm very fortunate, and like many restaurateurs, and yeah, they were there for us no matter what. And I think now we're all at the point where like they're happy to just have what they were used to back, and so are we. You know what I mean?
Your employees, how did you make the decision when it came to layoffs, which I assume there invariably must have been, obviously closing one restaurant, and then is there anything that sticks with you either from that decision or your conversations with your employees?
I think the biggest thing is you sit down with them and we know what we have to do, but collectively as a team, we're doing what's best for everyone and the safety of everyone. And I think that's the most important, because everything, and I like to think that once you detach yourself from the fear of what's happening and the uncertainty, everything will work out, because this is just the universe doing something that we don't have any control over. And I think that the answer to that is the fact that we have 100%, almost 100% retention of our employees in all of our companies outside the one that we had to close. And even then we made moves to turn that business into a food truck or something that was we could service people from the outside and kind of pivot to. So we love them all, and we're happy to have all of them with us, and I think it's that's the truth. That's the answer.
That may be the best takeaway from this conversation. You brought them all back. They're all
with whoever who's left for whatever reason. It's everyone who's been on our team is with
That's
and
fantastic.
has worked with us through the ups and downs of the roller coaster.
Restaurants, as you said before, are a difficult business. They have a slew of costs, from suppliers to staff to things like rent and taxes.
Yeah.
Did you get any help from your partners, from your suppliers?
I would say, I think everyone was a little bit more lenient, giving us a little bit of time and whatnot. They're all in the same boat, you know what I mean? But I'm just happy we can still call them purveyors like we call our employees.
You must have considered at some point over the year just packing it all up and calling it a day. Why didn't you?
Because this is what I do. I love it too much. There's a lot of people involved, not just myself, my family and my employees, and I think that we'll get through it. We always do, and I don't see myself doing anything else. So it's kind of,
As we talked tonight, the capacities at restaurants are increasing, as we talked about before. More money should be coming from Washington. Customers should be coming back with money in their pockets from the stimulus. Are you expecting more direct help from either Washington or Albany? What's your confidence level for the business? And how would you have a different confidence level had that stimulus bill not just passed? Me personally, I think that everything they have done has been extremely helpful, and I'm talking about just federal and state and local jurisdictions have been great with their grants and raising money and whatnot. I think that, I would say for us, no restaurant wants to go further into debt than they already are. So taking loans is also a big question, right? And how much do you really want to deal with? I think that things are opening up right now. I think that people are getting comfortable with vaccinations. I think that the weather is getting nicer, and
I think that the stimulus plan, yes, ultimately helps. It helps the people, not only the restaurants, but there are people who just need that money. People who weren't making money, people who are very poor. And I think that helps, whatever you can do helps stimulate the economy and stimulate, keep that blood circulation going with money is important. And I do think it's helpful for a lot of people right now. I'm very fortunate that, we're in a position where we're going to start to see things opening up, and I feel good about it. And business is getting better. So, yeah.
And of course, all your employees make money at the restaurant. They then have money that they can spend in other businesses, and that helps the overall economy. We talk about vaccine hesitancy, some people who are not sure whether they want to get it. Entirely possible we might have some restaurant hesitancy, especially in these early days as vaccines are still spreading around. What's the risk for you right now that you don't fill the 75% that you're allowed to fill? Or have you factored that in? I assume you're keeping delivery and takeout open.
I mean, the 75%, again, it's awesome because mentally, I think that people, myself and people are getting comfortable with the fact that you can go out and eat at 75%. It's a little tough in our restaurant, being the size that it is when you're dealing with a 6 feet mandate. Are you really, once you do the math, you're not going to have 75% of what you did. Vaccines, I feel like most of everyone is getting them at this point, including my staff. I've gotten one. We're all feeling a little bit better and more comfortable about serving the public and being indoors and them being safe as well.
Finally, before we run out of time, any regrets or mistakes that you can think of as you look back, or things you wish you had another bite at the apple?
No, I think if anything, this has taught us all a big lesson, including myself, is the only regret I would have is like to not be as fearful as I was, because you'll never know anything about something you just don't know anything about, and that's okay. And with the help of communities and restaurant friends like we've had throughout the year, I mean, sharing whatever we can with each other to make it a brighter day and get through this has been something special. It brings you closer to the people you love, and it's a good thing, I think, sometimes when you have that forced sort of organic thing you can't control. So,
David DiBari, chef, restaurateur, really appreciate the insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And up next on RFL, we're going to pivot to politics and head to California. Show you how millions of people are trying to boot Governor Newsom from office right in the middle of his term.